Welcome back to the Industry 4.0 and Sustainable Supply Chain stage here at CogX. I'm hoping that you've enjoyed the session so far as much as I have. I am Kat Keeley. I am CEO of Beep and founder of Frontline Live, and I'm here as your MC for the next couple of days. The next session is called Combating Covid-19 Impacts and the Competitive Advantage, and soon I will be handing you over to Gabrielle Doucas, Director of Marketing and Business Development, and Jamie Devlin, MD of Elutions, Inc. People have been talking a lot about digital transformation, and there's a lot of interest and confusion and memes. But what's myth and what's reality around how AI can actually help us out of this the crisis that is COVID? Over to Gabriella and Jamie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to get started with you guys and go straight into our slides. So a little bit about myself, Gabrielle Doucas. I started my career in tech at Oracle a few years ago, but I really wanted to join a team that was actually delivering real results in real time. So I started with Elutions about 3 years ago. And it's been great ever since. I've been working hand in hand with Jamie Devlin, who's a great coworker, and I'd like to hand it off to him.
Thanks, Gabriella. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, wherever you are signing in from around the world today. I'm Managing Director of Elutions, looking after our clients across the EMEA region and beyond. And my career has been in a combination of business consultancy and technology. I think I was working on some big data analytics projects 20 years ago, but now, and particularly now, I think the work we've been doing with Elutions in the past few years around AI and actually having a meaningful impact on our clients' value change, delivering value change and delivering some very tangible benefits, making sense of AI, what it means in practice and how it can actually help deliver an immediate benefit to organizations as they react to the challenges of COVID and as their business evolves through the other side. It becomes very, very important. So we're really looking forward to sharing our thoughts with you today on how that can be achieved and ultimately how organizations can actually gain a competitive advantage as we meet and beat the challenges that have been brought to us by COVID-19.
Great. Yeah, that's so true, Jamie, everything you said. We see here that everybody has really been talking about the impacts of COVID-19, but my question really to you, Jamie, is what are some of these impacts? Like, what are we seeing actual clients talking about?
I think most of all, the biggest impact we've seen is really people are reacting to the unknown. So for all the business continuity programs, for all the plan Bs and plan Cs are in place, none of them, or very, very, very few of them, will be able to address the challenges that COVID has brought to the global economy and to companies and organizations in every different sector. If you think about how it affects us on a personal level, it absolutely then reads across into how we interact with each other across society and then across how companies interact with each other as well. So if you think about the whole value chain of an organization or a company, everything from forecasting demand, whether that's customer demand or production demand or users or whatever that may be, that's been thrown into chaos. There's a huge amount of volatility in pretty much every single market. Our clients that we work with in the manufacturing or chemical processing industry, oil and gas industries, have suddenly either seen a massive drop in demand they're having to react to, or actually what's interesting with some of them, they saw what we call a super cycle of demand at the start of COVID, where companies that were producing ingredients that go into hand sanitizers or PPE equipment or the products we were all buying in supermarkets at crazy levels, they saw a super cycle of demand. But now, because there's so much out there in the market and storage is now becoming an issue, they're seeing a very low demand. So we're seeing ultimately a very high level of volatility in demand, and that then impacts the rest of the process, from sourcing ingredients and from sourcing raw materials, from sourcing feedstock. Again, high levels of volatility around cost of those resources. And when it comes to actually the production process or manufacturing process or refining process itself, we're seeing then a lot of issues around being able to configure your processes to actually meet that new level of demand, ultimately then with a fluctuating workforce. And many of the organizations we work with have seen a huge drop in the amount of people, one, that are available to work, maybe because of COVID directly, or because they are scaling back to ensure that their workforce is protected. And that has a follow-on impact then in how they approach the market and logistics. We've all seen the issues with air transport and road logistics. So the whole value chain, pretty much for every industry you can think of, is impacted at some level across those areas that I've talked about. And I think Elutions, being at the heart of what we do as a business, is deliver end-to-end artificial intelligence across those type of processes I've just described through our Maestro AI platform. And I think what we've seen is those organizations that have a digital strategy in place that can replace manual processes and work where possible, that can forecast and respond to volatility and demand the best. They're the companies that are both weathering the storm and also positioning themselves to gain that competitive advantage when the storm passes and we return to some kind of normality. So I think that's interesting. I think that what we're going to come on to now, Gabrielle, maybe is to look at actually what have people been talking about AI and digitalization in this context. And there's some really interesting statistics from the research that you've carried out.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue, because we've noticed that so many more people, there's so many more conversations online, whether it's on Twitter and blogs or on people's websites, LinkedIn, every channel, people are just talking about artificial intelligence, automation, machine learning, digital, and especially as a way to combat COVID-19. We've seen these conversations jump by 17% since December of last year. Of course, in January 2020, people were all setting up to, gear up for AI in this year and this decade and really looking to it. But now more than ever, we're seeing that people want to talk about artificial intelligence. But people are talking about it, but what exactly are they saying and why is it relevant right now?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think there was, I read a report actually, it may have come from McKinsey or elsewhere, but in 2017, it's estimated that 375 million workers, or potentially 14% of the global workforce, would be requiring to change jobs or change skills to respond to the changing working environment, whether that's driven by AI, automation, or elsewhere. Some people say, think about the jobs people were doing 100 or 150 years ago, and how many of those jobs still exist now. So there's a sense that there's inevitability, I think, around how the workforce changes and the skills that are required and the technologies that are available. But I think what we've seen now is an acceleration of that thinking in response to COVID. In particular, people have a reason now to rethink that. And interestingly, I think it was a couple of years ago, and this was from a McKinsey report, 87% of executives said they did have a skills gap. So there is a skills gap for people to fill, but 50% of those executives didn't know how to fill it. And I think COVID has accelerated that whole process.
Definitely, I totally agree. And just to move forward, I think we can see that these are some of the key terms that are being talked about online regarding artificial intelligence and the surrounding words and COVID-19. Obviously, COVID-19 is huge. People are looking to AI not only to solve and to find a cure or a vaccine for COVID-19, but also to, like we're saying, address the business impacts and the global impacts of what's happened. It's such an unprecedented event, and AI is really being sought after as a solution.
Yeah, I think some of these words are actually really interesting. and is you're cautious about joining them up a bit too much on these kind of charts, but I have some in front of me here. But business, data, artificial intelligence is definitely in there. Challenges is big in there as well. Technology, one of the biggest words. I think services, cloud, analytics, accelerate. There's some absolute key words in there. I think it's interesting to see how they put that together. What does it mean? Maybe it's symptomatic of what we said up front, Gabriella, about people knowing there has to be something in these solutions, in these words people are using, but what does it actually mean in practice, and how can we do it?
Definitely. And you see here, there's people are talking about the future and how to move forward and how do we get beyond this. And we can't really afford to be looking at all of the noise. We need to really be talking about AI as something that's well defined and applicable with tangible and verifiable outcomes. And I really think that is one of the key differentiators between Elutions and a lot of other people who are talking about AI online. We're talking about tangible results, how to get past COVID, and that's what we're here to talk about today.
I think so. I think one of the biggest challenges we find in companies that we work with who want to, they know there's a benefit that can be delivered through AI. They're not sure what the benefit is, and they're not sure how to get there. And people have had huge challenges around issues such as data collection, data cleansing, people building data lakes. With an Elutions approach, with Maestro, our AI platform, where we don't need those things. And I think the key to being able to deliver that benefit immediately and sustain it is the neural network that we've developed in Maestro that automates and completely autonomously optimizes these processes. That self-learning ability of a neural network has been key for us accelerating those benefits with clients, even in normal times. And now that's become just even more compelling as a way through COVID. So yeah, let's get on and talk about some of those things.
Yes, let's. Okay. So here we are. Adapt quickly and thrive. That's really what we believe, right?
Yeah, I think so. And that's the important piece. And I think these three areas that we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail are also really important. And that really grounds AI and what you can deliver with AI in reality. It's really important, first and foremost, that companies and organizations can stabilize as a result of COVID and those challenges that we discussed earlier. So first and foremost, can they survive? Can they stabilize this huge amount of volatility that's occurring across their value chain and within their own organization at all levels, leadership levels, operational levels, middle management levels, across their contractors, across their logistics arms, across their supply chain. So there's a need to bring some stability to the process. And then we're going to come on and talk about, okay, once you're stable and you've settled the ship, you've steadied the ship, how can you then optimize? How can you deliver much needed cost savings? How can you increase margins at a time when there's lots of money being thrown around and there's very little, often much less revenue coming in? So how can we actually optimize the performance of these companies at the time? And then what opportunity does that actually give us for the future? And if you are using AI to stabilize and optimize your organization right now, what does it mean for transforming your business in the long term? What does it mean for your operating models and your organizational structure? What does it mean for your existing infrastructure and ways of working? And people are, thinking about a new normality, and this could be the trigger to do that and accelerate it. And I think, to touch on Elutions and Maestro a little bit more, that's, as I say, what we've been doing for the last 25 years, and particularly around AI in the last 7 to 10 years. But it really is that ability to implement Maestro within an environment in a very non-intrusive way. So without having to spend months or weeks on end working with clients to map their processes and develop algorithms and obtain all that domain knowledge from the organization, a client organization, which takes up a lot of time, and they just can't afford that time right now.
Yeah.
So with Maestro, what we've seen by deploying it in those client infrastructures and connecting to existing systems, and Maestro is actually autonomously learning those client processes. It's understanding the impacts across the whole value chain, and it's identifying crucially where those opportunities lie to optimize. And that's what we're seeing now. The application of that approach, which we do normally in any case, but the application of that approach now it is even more compelling because of those challenges that COVID's brought. So I think that's the context in which I think looking at the challenges, looking at we say noise, it's not necessarily noise. There's a lot of people talking about it, which is great, but articulate it in a way for their organization that makes sense, and there's a clear benefit, and there's a clear path to achieving those objectives. I think that's the biggest challenge of all that these organizations are facing.
Yeah, I think you could say that there's a lot more on the line right now, given everything that's happened. And I think we all would like to believe that we're kind of at this midpoint or a little bit farther in, but it's such an unprecedented time that we don't really know. Are we still at the beginning? Are we in the middle? Are we towards the end? It's really a lot of unknowns. And I guess my question to you, basically, because of all the interaction that you've had with clients, is where do you think most companies are? Are they stabilizing? Are they stabilized? Are they optimizing? Where are they?
I think it's a bit of both, and they're stabilizing for different reasons. As I say, some of them are having to respond to very high levels of demand actually at the start of COVID, which brought its own challenges, and being able to meet those. And those clients that were in industries which took an immediate hit on demand. And once you get past that kind of period of kind of what on earth is going on here, I think those people, particularly at leadership level in those organizations, that can set the strategy as quickly as possible, and then look for, okay, well, how do we deliver on that? How can we take an oil refinery that's now operating at 60% capacity and reconfigure our refining assets to meet that capacity and still deliver the operating margins that we're looking for with a reduced workforce and different shift patterns? So I think it's interesting. I think there's a couple of angles to look at this actually. Some organizations kind of bunker in, pull the shutters down, let's get our heads down, let's focus on our core business and see if we can get through this. And I think other organizations, and maybe this is around digital, but it's also other aspects as well, say, okay, we're going to have to think differently. And we're going to have to think differently now. We can't afford to do it when we think we're stable, because as you said, Gabriella, what does being stable mean? What do we think the economy is going to look like? I mean, look at airlines, look at airports that are literally have no passengers, whereas previously they're looking at millions of passengers every quarter. How on earth do these organizations actually respond to those challenges? So I think it's to think you're stable now is risky to some extent, because we simply don't know how the next weeks and months are going to pan out. So being prepared at every level is so important.
I totally agree. I think we should dive a little bit deeper into each step, and let's talk a little bit more about stabilizing survival. I mean, airlines, it's a great example. People are just starting to move around a little bit more now, and it's easy. Yeah. It's easy for us to say, oh, you need to deploy at speed and scale, but how is Elutions actually doing it?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it a couple of times, and sometimes when people talk about data collection and cleaning data and what have you, it seems like the boring part of AI. But I'm sure as everyone who's listening to this talk this afternoon and this week at CogX knows, data acquisition, data handling, data processing is very obviously at the heart of a successful approach to AI and its application across not just an organization, but across that organization's value chain. And I think one of the key things that we've done at Elutions to enable that to happen very quickly is automating that entire process. So connecting to our clients' existing infrastructure has been absolutely key. So we don't have to install new equipment or rip and replace anything that's there. We can sit and interconnect with our clients' control systems and ERP systems and maintenance systems and supply systems and customer data, and that all comes into Maestro, and we automate that whole process. And Maestro can handle that different formats, different timestamps, different protocols, filling data gaps, cleansing tags and control systems that would otherwise take weeks and weeks. And that means once we process that data very quickly through Maestro, we're able to demonstrate to the client exactly where we see those opportunities to optimize their value chain. And that's the really important part. As you said right up front, Gabrielle, people don't want to be distracted at these sort of times by projects that may or may not deliver a benefit. This is something new. This sounds disruptive. And to an extent, they're right. Innovation is disruptive. But if you have a clear path forward, and if you're confident of the benefits it's going to deliver, then it's worth it. And I think that's the key part, being confident in the benefit it's going to deliver. And I think what we see with our clients when we process that data through Maestro and we show them that this is exactly what Maestro is now going to do. It's going to optimize this part of your production process, this part of your sourcing strategy or trading strategy, your customer demand forecasting. And we can show them with very clear examples how that would happen. Then it gives that senior leadership team the confidence to actually go ahead and do it. And for us, being outcome focused is absolutely crucial, particularly in the space of AI, when there is so-called sort of noise around, and well, how much benefit is Maestro delivering compared to what we could do with our own people, our own experts. And that's about us proving that in that environment, in a live environment with real examples, and show how the interdependency of all those variables and constraints, the physical constraints, the data constraints, how they do actually interact with each other to find benefits that could not otherwise be found by humans, simply in terms of processing capacity, but also what I would call standard algorithmic capabilities. So we definitely want to move away from individual or kind of teams of data scientists coding very specific algorithms through to Maestro, which is an autonomous neural network, which is self-generating algorithms to optimize that entire process. That's how you deploy quickly. And while we could talk for hours about the technology, which I think is really cool, the outcome is so important.
Yeah, and I think that's a great.
I know you're moving me on.
Yeah, I'm going to move you on because you hit this one really. You talked about optimization, and we can just briefly go over this one. And you already hit my questions on tangible outcomes and how are we really seeing this happen. So, Elutions is leading that.
Yeah, I think we did touch on a bit. I think by tangible outcomes, let's also be clear, what we mean by that. This isn't saying, a big kind of finger in the air. We think we've saved, we've reduced the unit cost of production by a few percent, so we've increased revenue by this amount. And this is actually every single decision that Maestro has made for that organization, being able to track it back to a very precise increase in production value or a reduction in operational cost that can be verified, it can be audited, so that people have a very high level of confidence in the impact that we're having, which, by the way, is also an automated aspect of Maestro. We're very outcome focused. We depend and we focus entirely on the outcome that we deliver. So for Maestro to be able to measure that benefit in real time and let our clients see that benefit accrue in real time is very, very important. So it has to be very tangible. That's not a throwaway statement. It has to be very, very clear. And that's where people see the incremental benefit of AI as opposed to other projects that are going on as well. So we're moving away. This isn't dashboarding. This isn't providing information in a way that enables people to make better decisions. This is actually prescribing the decisions and actions that control systems or people need to take to actually deliver that benefit that Maestro has identified.
Yeah, you're talking about true artificial intelligence leading to this optimization, which in the end will lead to transformation, which I think brings us nicely to our next point. And
there you go. Almost like we planned. Yeah,
it's almost, I mean, really. So, Jamie,
very serious. I need to smile more. I think I was a bit serious up until that. Yeah.
How are these benefits that we're talking about, tangible results, using real artificial intelligence? You know, that's something really important for us, a big differentiator with Elutions. We're talking about true artificial intelligence. How are these benefits sustained long term?
It's a great question, and very often, and I've been in the organizations I've worked with in my over my career, you do a great project, wow, look what we've achieved, and then unless you embed that in the organization, it goes on a shelf. You might even have an award, the award collects dust, and you haven't sustained those benefits in the long term. So I think and particularly in our experience of AI and the approach I've just described, by definition, we are really embedding AI into that client's value chain and their processes. So let's assume we are delivering the benefits that we identify, and they're very tangible. And it's the leadership, and I talk about the senior leadership team because very often you do need senior level sponsorship for these type of programs, because it is changing the organization, and senior level sponsorship, I think, is very important from a strategy perspective, and then working with teams across the organization to actually implement that strategy. But it transforms the operating models for sure. The old ways of working, which still may be there fundamentally. We're not changing the design principles necessarily of a chemical process or a refinery, although we are to some extent. But we are looking to embed that as continuous improvement. These environments people operate in are dynamic. Things are changing all the time. And that's where autonomous AI responds to those dynamic environments in real time and without bias. So we don't have cognitive bias going into those decision makings. It's driven by the data across billions of data points to make those benefits a reality and transform for long term. The ultimate transformation through AI could potentially be a manufacturing company taking a different position in the market, moving into different areas. There's a real opportunity for companies to maybe diversify as a result of AI across their value chain and what it tells them about where their strengths and weaknesses are in their current operating models, or indeed the profitability of the products that they're making. We're working on that with some organizations as well in manufacturing and food and beverage manufacturing, which products that we think are profitable, and what is the actual unit cost of making them compared to demand, and can we forecast that accurately? And these type of correlations are just so difficult unless you have really powerful AI platforms. So I think transformation is an inevitable consequence of deploying this type of AI, but it can be so much more if it's really embraced by the whole organization.
And I think what you're alluding to, really the ultimate transformation, we're kind of getting into the competitive advantage, right?
Exactly. And that could be a competitive advantage simply because you've been able to survive and stabilize and optimize as a result of COVID. That could be your competitive advantage. But much more strategically than that, I think there's that opportunity for organizations. I say organization, not just companies. Clearly there are companies that we work with that are for profit and looking to survive in a globalized market. But there's also organizations in many different sectors of our society that could also benefit from this, particularly those that are engaging with millions of people on a day-to-day basis. But really that's at the core of Elutions' philosophy to AI. There has to be a point. What is the point of doing this? There's no point to do it if you cannot see a benefit, if it's not going to change your organization, if you go back to old ways of working. But there is absolutely a point if at the end of as a result of implementing Maestro and the sort of approach to AI that I have described, that it not only changes what you're doing and saves money and increases your margins in the short and medium term, but what does it mean for your business in the long term? And what does your business mean in the next 25, 30 years? As I said right at the start, You think about companies that exist today and how long they've been in business, and how many of them are older than 50, 60, 70 years old. Not many at all.
Right. That's
So
true.
for companies to sustain in the long term, by definition, you need competitive advantage. You need to survive, and AI can give you a really powerful and different perspective on where that journey should take you.
Yeah, totally agree. It was great to chat with you today, Jamie.
Thanks, Gabriella. Good to talk to you in this kind of context.
Yeah.
I hope it's been informative, maybe thought-provoking, purposefully so for the people listening, and we'd be happy to take some questions.
Definitely.
Bang on time. How about that?
Thank you so much for that thought-provoking session, Gabriella and Jamie. There is so many uncertainties and so much noise. We're all bombarded by these endless challenges that are constantly reported. And people need some way of understanding the accelerating change. We need some sense of stability, of clarity. We need to see opportunities. We need support to make the right decisions. And it occurred to me as I was listening to that maybe it's the lack of human leadership that is driving people to look to AI for some common sense. And now it's time to hand over to the Q&A, and I'll see you back here at the Industry 4.0 and Sustainable Supply Chain stage here at CogX. Our first session is at 10 a.m, where we'll be looking at where are we now? How will Covid-19 impact the next phase of the Industry 4.0 revolution? Can industry adapt business models quickly enough to recover? So I look forward to seeing you then.
Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.